Welcome to Sex Ed with DB. I'm your host, DB. Let's get into it.
Welcome to Two Black Girls, One Rose,
a podcast discovering what we can learn about modern dating, love, and relationships from popular television. I'm Natasha.
And I'm Justine.
We're best friends and TV fanatics, and every week on our podcast, we're recapping all of your faves, from reality shows like Love is Blind and The Bachelor to classics like Sex and the City.
Each week, we recap the latest episode while discussing topics like, is friendship or passion a better foundation for a relationship? And should we be dating men in their 20s?
We both spent our 20s dating all around New York City, so we've got a lot of relatable mess and stories to share.
Listen to us on all podcast platforms, and for bonus and video content, join us on Patreon.
Hello, DB here, your favorite sex educator, pleasure expert, and rom-com critic. Today we're bringing you a special re-release from the Curious Sex Ed series I co-hosted with my friend and fellow sex educator, Mariah Caudillo from Sex Ed Files. In this bonus episode, we're tackling a topic that's often surrounded by shame, confusion, and clickbait: porn addiction. What does it mean when people say they're addicted to porn? How do we talk about it with nuance, compassion, and curiosity? And how do we separate facts from fear-mongering? Whether you've heard this one before or it's new to you, we think it's worth revisiting. Let's get into it. Hello.
Hi.
How you doing today?
I'm doing good. It is a cloudy Monday, and I like the overcast weather, so I feel good.
Yeah, it's pretty cozy. I feel like I could go get maybe like a little glass of tea, and I have some leftover pie in the fridge randomly.
Oh, that sounds so good. I just had coffee, a late morning coffee.
I'm into that. Is there like a certain time where you have to stop drinking like caffeine in order to sleep, or are you like, fuck it doesn't matter?
I used to have that like strict stop like around 3, but I don't know. I feel like it's worn off, so I just do whatever. I also have like a Diet Coke in the afternoon, so
okay, you're like caffeinated up.
Yeah, I don't think it affects me anymore.
Okay, respect. That's totally cool. I'm so excited that we're here today because it's our first episode together as Curious Sex Ed, and we've been like pals, colleagues for like a little while now, and I'm just so excited that we're doing a full-on project together.
I know. I'm excited. This is my first ever podcast project. I mean, I've done like a couple of guest things, but yeah, it's scary.
It's a little scary. I think like knowing how much your audience and my audience really enjoy the education that we put forth, and the fact that, you know, in these episodes we're sharing a little bit about ourselves as well, which I feel like is a little different than our videos and our other content, because it's really sharing education, which also is what we're doing here. But I think that mix feels a little vulnerable, maybe a little scary, but kind of different and a unique way that we can kind of connect with people, which is cool.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like TikTok is a completely different kind of relationship. So this is going to be fun. I'm excited.
I'm into it. And yeah, why don't you go ahead and introduce like what is our first episode on today, and what was the question that someone wrote in?
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about porn addiction, my favorite topic.
Amazing.
The question we got says, I'm worried I've been watching too much porn. Can I get addicted to porn? And if so, what do I do about it?
Yeah, I fucking love this question.
Me too.
Yeah, both of us definitely talk about porn and ethical porn and porn addiction and all of these different facets of it. And so I'm really, really excited to kind of get into this. And before we even do that, right, I kind of want to talk about how does this thing even work that we're doing every week, since it's this new thing, right? So we mentioned this, I mentioned this in Sex Ed with DB full-length episodes, but essentially these episodes will be coming out every Friday, and this is our first episode ever, and the first 3 episodes that we do together for Curious Sex Ed will be available through Sex Ed with DB wherever you get your podcasts. If you listen on Spotify or SoundCloud or YouTube or Apple Podcasts, wherever. And then beyond that, we will exclusively be available through Buy Me a Coffee. And so if you want to check us out, go to buymeacoffee.com/CuriousSexEd. And if you want access to this amazing content, you can join our bestie crew and you can learn all about that there. Also, if you want to ask an anonymous question, you can find our form on there. And say you're maybe not down to contribute every month. Maybe you just want to say, hey, like, I'm proud of the work that you're doing and I'm happy that this content is getting out there. You can give us a little tip and buy us a coffee. And so I just want to shout that out before we even get into our first topic area, Mariah, as it's very important people know how to access this amazing content.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Totes my goats. So let's talk about our personal stories first. What do we really think about porn? And if we could think back a little bit, like, how was porn kind of first introduced to us, or how were we introduced to it?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people, I was introduced to it accidentally, like just stumbled upon it. I kind of remember in middle school, I was like at a sleepover and we were all looking at it on the computer, like someone had pulled it up and we were all like around it watching. So yeah, I was very young and it wasn't like I didn't know what it was. I didn't go to the computer and type something in. It was just like, oh my gosh, what is this? And
right, shock value.
Yeah, I was very shocked, very shook, but also kind of like, what is that? This is interesting, like very curious. I also come from a very like religious background where we don't talk about sex or porn or anything like that. So I didn't think anything related to bodies could go beyond like marriage or whatever, that kind of idea. So this was very, very, very new. But I think after that, like much later in my life is when I was more intentional about looking up porn. And yeah, I think overall, I feel like I've had a very positive experience with it. Like it's helped me kind of discover things about myself, including my sexuality. Like lesbian porn has been I can't think of the word, but like it's really helped me get to a place where, additive something. So yeah, that's kind of like my journey. It hasn't been an exciting journey. I feel like it's a very common one.
I think it's exciting. I mean, I think that anything about porn is just exciting because people's ears kind of perk up. They're like, "What, you're talking about porn? What's going on?" Because everyone, especially in our American society, it's very much like unless you were brought up in a family that was very open and very talking about it and giving you kind of heads up about what you might encounter and how to decipher these, like that's not most people's experiences. Right. So I think that totally makes sense. And I think for me, I remember kind of first encounters with porn as like flipping through cable and late at night when I was doing this, there was like one of those channels that was like HBO or like something that they played porn. Yes. Like you didn't even have to put in any sort of password or there, this was maybe before kind of like child locks on TV, quote unquote. But I just remember, and it was pretty like intense. And I just remember being like, oh, I'm not supposed to watch that, but let me just maybe keep clicking through until I get to it again. Oh my God. And then just kind of, it was very overwhelming. And I kind of knew right away that it was something that I wasn't supposed to be looking at. But I think very early on, probably as like a middle schooler too, that was like something that really surprised me and titillated me and got me excited and like kind of weirded out. And that was kind of the first experience I had with it.
Yeah, I totally know what you're talking about with the channels. Oh my gosh. It was always at like 2 a.m.
Yes, exactly. Like obviously it was on so late because that's when adults maybe would be watching it, but like did they not consider the youth?
Yeah. No, I have a bunch of siblings and I always thought it was like an accident. Like they're accidentally showing this on here like, oh no.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember same kind of thing where like my cousins came over and we were literally watching TV and we just flipped through it and we all saw it and I was like, oh, this is so weird and embarrassing. But yeah, totally. Yeah, I can feel the tension in my body. But again, like no one was talking to me about that. No one was saying like, hey, this is a thing that you might encounter, or I don't remember if I did go to my parents about it. It's just kind of this like awkward taboo thing.
Yeah. And that makes it super difficult to know, like, or to ask yourself the question, like, am I addicted to this? Is this too much? How do I know if I'm watching too much porn? And I think that's how people arrive at this question of like, am I addicted? What's porn addiction? Is because there isn't a rule book for this kind of stuff.
Totally. Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of like what that subjectivity about porn addiction can really feel and look like, and kind of what are some maybe like signs that someone may have an issue with porn, is maybe a better way of saying it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It really, I always kind of go back to like every person is different, and like the way we experience the world, including sex and porn, really can vary from person to person. It's very subjective, right? So I feel like each individual has to evaluate how porn makes them feel, what their relationship is like. But yeah, there are definitely signs. There are things like, you're spending an excessive amount of time watching porn and it's interfering with your daily life, your activities, going to school, work, your relationships, really doing anything new. Like that's probably a sign you might be, have an unhealthy relationship with porn, I guess. Or you're constantly thinking about it, or you have a lot of urges to compulsively watch it. Also, if you feel a lot of shame or guilt, I think that's a really big one, because that can totally impact a person's like relationship with sex and kind of like how they show up. And if they're like trying to hide it from people. I also think, I'm not like a doctor or a psychologist, so I know I'm sure there's more like clinical descriptions of this, but I'm sure like if someone's experiencing like decreased sexual satisfaction, if like that's all they need porn in order to have satisfying sexual experiences with other people, or maybe even on their own, like with their imagination. Yeah. And I think like if they're going to it when they're going through emotional pain, like it's a coping mechanism versus like something someone's choosing because they really like it and they're going to it to enjoy it, and not necessarily like their only kind of distraction. I mean, I'm sure like there's a lot of distractions we have in our life, but like
right.
That's
why it's hard to decipher, right? I mean, like it can be tricky.
Very, very, very tricky. But yeah, I feel like those are some pretty clear signs, I guess. It's just if you're consumed, you're like overly consumed, when maybe you shouldn't be.
Yeah, right. Or when you're feeling like it's taking more than it's giving you, is like another maybe way to say that. And like we make this disclaimer in the beginning of the episode on purpose, like we are not medical professionals, and
right.
If you're feeling like some of these signs, you're relating with them, it is really important to chat with a healthcare expert, like a doctor or a sex therapist or a mental health therapist, to really just chat about like what might be going on, what are those habits that you want to maybe discuss and kind of think through a little bit, and what can be done about them. Because, this next major question of like, can you become addicted to watching porn like you can become addicted to drugs, right? And like, we don't have a totally conclusive answer, and porn addiction is still being debated among researchers. However, the American Psychological Association does not recognize porn addiction as a mental health condition or disorder. And what that means is that they considered the evidence and concluded that it is not a true addiction like physical addiction to drugs is. But there is a difference in the scientific community. There are some folks who think that, yes, porn addiction is real. Here's the science behind that. And there are some scientific folks who say, no, it's not. And here's why. Yeah. And so, even though porn addiction has yet to be recognized as a diagnosable condition, there is behavior around porn use that has been described as, quote, problematic porn use, right? Which is essentially the signs that we mentioned above. And so it's definitely possible to have a very unhealthy relationship with porn in which a person really depends on it. They watch it excessively. They're consumed by it without the ability to control themselves. And I think labeling this for some people as porn addiction makes sense. And everyone is entitled to the way in which they want to label themselves. And at the same time, right, like it's important to consult that medical provider to give them the facts and hear what they have to say on it. And the last thing I'll say on that is kind of problematic internet porn is viewing internet pornography that is problematic for that person for a number of reasons, right? And we mentioned some of those signs above. And if you're someone who's uncomfortable with the amount of porn or the type of porn that you are consuming and the way that it impacts your life and it makes you feel, then it's really important to really, really think, okay, do I have a problem? Is there a way that I can be addressing this with anybody who's a professional?
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of like you were saying, like any sort of, or maybe you didn't say this, I don't know. You said
maybe
something.
I was thinking it.
Yeah, it made me think like not just like the emotional distress, but like also the physical thing. Like if you're hurting yourself, it's causing a lot of pain, sex and porn and all of these things should be very pleasurable. And if you like pain, that's cool. But like, of course there's a difference between hurting yourself because you can't stop versus intentionally choosing that. Right. So yeah, I totally agree with the sentiment of like, it's really important to talk with someone who specializes in this, healthcare provider, any like sort of mental health specialist or therapist, because they're going to be the people who can kind of support and guide an individual to try and figure out if this is an issue, if there does need to be some sort of solution or what steps someone can take to have a healthier relationship.
Exactly. And on that note, if you're interested, if you're listening on kind of what a healthy relationship could look like with someone watching and consuming porn, what maybe ethical porn is and what that looks like, kind of the advanced conversation around porn that goes beyond this idea that we're peddling this idea maybe of like only porn is negative, right? Like we want to cover this because people are asking. And I think it's a reflection of what people are feeling and thinking in our society. But we want to be very clear as sex educators that porn can also be very healthy for people and can bring people a lot of joy and have an opportunity for people to explore their sexuality and their kinks and their desires and what they like and really explore and expand that for them. And so if you're interested in learning more about that or other aspects of porn, please check out our anonymous question box in our Buy Me a Coffee page. If you go to buymeacoffee.com/CuriousSexEd, you can learn again about our bestie crew, how to support us, how to gain access to this exclusive content if you enjoyed this first episode. And you can click on the anonymous question box link there. And Mariah, thank you so much. We did it. This is our first episode. We crushed it.
Yes, I'm really excited. And I just want to add and make it super clear. I love porn, and I love porn. And I really, really value the people who create porn, who are behind like sex workers, people who are writing the porn. Like there's so much, like you said, there's so much joy and good that can be found, especially in ethical porn. But we can talk about the unhealthy side of things and relationships people might have with it, as well as the good. And I think I like that about these conversations.
That's it for this re-release. We hope this episode sparked some curiosity and maybe even challenged how you think about porn, pleasure, and addiction. If you're loving these combos, follow Sex Ed with DB wherever you get your podcasts. And send this episode to someone who might find it helpful. See you next time. Love y'all. Our creator, host, and executive producer is me, Danielle Bezalel, aka DB. Our producer is Sadie Lidji. Our communications lead is Cathren Cohen. Our music theme is by Hook Sounds. Thanks so much to our featured guests, partners, and listeners. If you have a rom-com you remember from growing up and want us to cover it on Rom-Com Bomb, Submit it to us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and leaving a comment on Spotify. Want to partner with us? Email us at sexedwithdb@gmail.com. For more sex ed content, follow us on Instagram at sexedwithdbpodcast. See you next time.